coming here to Canberra. They'll be holding a rally outside Parliament House a little later this month on the 22nd, I believe. Now, in response, the Canberra Anti-Racism Network has organised its own rally against racism, which will start around an hour earlier. Dean Maloney is from the Canberra Anti-Racism Network and he joins us on the program. G'day, Dean.
G'day.
What are your main concerns with them?
Well, our main concerns with them is essentially what they're espousing, which I think boils down to a fairly racist view of the world.
In what way? Because that's it's a very broad statement to make. So, in what way? I'm just trying to understand.
Fair enough. Well, a lot of what they talk about is explicitly directed, in particular, against Muslims in Australia, also against refugees. But, for instance, calls to ban halal food, calls to cease immigration from Muslim countries. I think this could only be described as an attack on people for their religious beliefs, but also in the sense that it's targeted against people of Middle Eastern appearance.
All right, well, I spoke to one of their Canberra members yesterday who insisted that they're just normal mums and dads who aren't racist or anti-Islam. He says they're just concerned about extremists. Daniel Evans is his name. If you don't mind, I might play a little bit of what he had to say yesterday and might get you to respond to it, if that's okay, Dean.
Sure.
Mums and dads with jobs, just seeing what's going on in Australia, and we're all wanting to do something about it. We're worried about our kids and the future that we'll hold. So a lot of my concerns is just changing. A lot of these Islam groups are more of the extremist ones, which might be funny to hear, but I do have some Muslim friends. A lot of people in my group are a bit bewildered by that. I'm not against Muslims. I'm against the extremists. I'm against the hate preachers and people who are trying to change Australia. A lot of the Muslims I know, they love Australia. They're not trying to change anything or do anything. We're out there trying to stop these changes. We are showing absolute patriotism and love for this country. In a lot of these rallies, our opposition have come and burnt the Australian flag. Now, to do that shows utter contempt for the country they're living in, and I think it's just disgusting. Look at who the real Australians are. Look at who's looking out for Australia and its culture, its heritage.
All right, so that's what Daniel had to say yesterday, Dean. What do you make of that?
Well, it sounds like their usual PR spiel, but I think he kind of gives the game away when he admits that most people in his group are bewildered at the fact that he even knows some Muslim people. I think that might point a little more toward what binds the group together beyond the sort of platitudes about Australia that Daniel Evans mentions.
Why is it that I never hear from your group? I mean, I'm talking to you about this issue today, but we had a bunch of absolute quarterwits in Sydney holding their own kind of sermon, whatever you want to call it, at Bankstown, hizbut tariha. Why is it that your group never speaks out about those people, but you'll speak out against Reclaim Australia?
Well, our group, the Canberra Anti-Racism Network, was set up explicitly to counter what we think is the threat of racist people on the margins.
But is not hizbut tariha racist with their rants against the way that Australians live? For instance, they believe it's okay for Muslim children to walk out of assembly when the Australian anthem's being played. Is that not racist?
I don't see how that's directing hatred against a particular race. Well, I'm not an expert on hizbut tariha, to be honest. I know very little about what they stand for, but as far as I'm aware, they haven't been calling for a shutdown of immigration or anything like that.
I'm just wondering, Dean, we seem to have a group of organisations in this country that are very quick, and I'm not saying, look, I'm not defending Reclaim Australia for 1 minute, but what I do find fascinating is that we have a number of groups in this country that are very quick to call groups like Reclaim Australia racist, but yet we don't hear them lashing out against these fanatical groups who they are, I guess, in their own words, directing their angst against. Does that make sense to you?
Well, frankly, yeah. I mean, in my opinion, I think one of the major problems in Australia at the moment is not the fact that, you know, an incredibly minor section Islam may be wanting to do this, that or the other. I think one of the much greater threats in Australia is the fact that with government policy continuing to, I think, encourage some of the scaremongering against Muslims, against Islam in general, with attacks on Muslims in the street, attacks on mosques around the country, I happen to think that is a quite significant threat that should be taken up.
Last time I checked, it wasn't anybody from Reclaim Australia that shot somebody in Martin Place.
But many of the people who have spoken at their marches, many of the most high-profile figures within that movement and the broader movement around Reclaim Australia, people like Blair Cottrell, have open neo-Nazi views. One of their other leaders has been arrested for arson. These are not nice people.
So what will your message be at this rally? And do you not believe that it's a bit confrontational to put one on an hour before this mob?
Well, what we're trying to do is make clear to the media on the day, make clear to anyone in Canberra who sees it on the day, that if they see a group like Reclaim Australia espousing views that I think are quite obviously racist, I want them to be able to see that there's a whole lot of people in Canberra, a much larger number of people in Canberra who stand against those views and want to stand for inclusion and for equality.
All right. Okay, mate, I really appreciate it. So that'll be happening on the 22nd as well, around about an hour or so before.
Midday at Parliament on the 22nd.
Okay. Now, you're not expecting any problems with Reclaim Australia, are you?
I certainly hope not.
Well, I'm just wondering why you would do it on the same day.
Because I don't think groups like this, groups like Reclaim Australia, should be allowed to sort of say what they say uncontested.
Hang on.
So we want to be there on the day.
Isn't that a bit
provide
hypocritical when we've got hizbut tariha saying what they want to say and you're not contesting that, but you want to contest Reclaim Australia? It doesn't make sense to me, Dean.
That's because I oppose the racism of Reclaim Australia.
But not hizbut tariha.
I don't think what hizbut tariha says sounds anything much like what Reclaim Australia says.
Okay.
I don't see why they should be lumped in the same basket. But as I say, I'm not an expert on them, but
I just
if you
find
can
it
find evidence that hizbut tariha is
mate, there's plenty of it. Why don't you go look for it? Why doesn't your mob go and look for it? Why do you not go
So
and
you
look?
think it should be our responsibility to take on this particular group that you have a problem with? You think that a group in Canberra that was formed in order to oppose racism from groups like Reclaim Australia
Yeah, but shouldn't you be opposing
that
all
you might
racism?
instead?
No, shouldn't you be opposing all racism?
Yes,
Well,
we should, and we do. And I think there's no evidence that in Australia at the moment, racism directed against anyone except for refugees, Indigenous people and Muslims is anything like a problem.
Yeah.
I think the people who are affected the most by racism in Australia at the moment are Muslims, people from the Middle East,
right. Okay.
Indigenous Australians,
Well, I think you
refugees.
need to take your head out of the sand, mate.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm offended. I'm offended by what organisations like Hizbut Tahrir say on the weekend.
Do you think you're seriously at threat from racism in Australia at the moment? That you need defence from an anti-racism group?
Why not? Reclaim Australia and others that think similarly to them, that feel that our way of life is under threat from Islam of the extreme variety. Shouldn't they have the freedom to express their fears, their anxieties?
Well, they are expressing their fears and anxieties.
Yeah, but not without you.
They're holding a rally on the 22nd.
Yeah, but not
What
without
this
you
interview's
on.
about.
Yeah, but not with you on their back, calling them racists.
Well, surely we have freedom of speech and freedom of criticism.
Well, what about if I was to call you a racist?
Well, you'd have a right to that opinion. I just happen to think it's a bit odd, to be
Really? Well, I
frank.
think it's a bit odd that you mob hold your rally on the same day.
Well, we think that people espousing racist views shouldn't go uncontested. They have a right to their opinions. We have a right to ours.
All right.
We expect our side to be massively larger,
All right.
reflecting that a hell of a lot more people agree with us than agree with them.
Okay, Dean. Thanks for your time, mate.
No worries, mate.
See ya. Bye.